The last promise I ever made to my best friend was whispered in a hospital hallway that smelled like industrial bleach and fading hope. He was already gone. I didn't know it at the time. I was still waiting for a miracle that wasn't coming, but keeping that promise, it would take me 20 years. It would take a divorce, 3 cross-country moves, and a mountain of regret. And it would end with me standing at the back of a church, wearing a watch that had stopped ticking the night he died, getting ready to walk a woman I barely knew down the aisle. My name is Ryan, and this is the story of how a 13-year-old's blood oath became a 50-year-old's redemption. Stick around, because life doesn't always give you a second chance, but sometimes it gives you a legacy. I met Connor Hale in 1988. We were 13, middle school was a war zone, and I was the kid getting stuffed into locker 402. Connor was the one who kicked the locker door open. He didn't even know my name. He just looked at the bullies and said, "Find a new hobby before I make you one." Connor was chaos in a denim jacket. He was loud, he was reckless, and he had this laugh that sounded like a gravel truck dumping its load, rough, heavy, and impossible to ignore. We became a duo instantly. We were the Ohio Trash Pandas. We spent our summers on BMX bikes, jumping over creeks we had no business crossing, and our winters trying to sneak into R-rated movies. As we hit high school, the roles solidified. I was the brain, the one meant for big things, suits, and corner offices. Connor was the muscle, the guy who loved the feel of lumber and the smell of sawdust. He was a craftsman. He could look at a pile of scrap wood and see a dining table. After graduation, the split happened. You know the one, that fork in the road where you promised to stay in touch, but the zip codes start changing. I went to Ohio State to study law. Connor stayed in our hometown, picked up a hammer, and started building houses. He also started building a life with Emily Brooks. Emily was the girl next door, literally. She was the only person who could tell Connor no and make him listen. They got married in a backyard ceremony where the beer was cold and the music was way too loud. I was the best man. I remember holding the ring and thinking, he's got it figured out. He's actually doing it. A few years later, Connor called me. I was in a high-rise in Chicago, pulling an all-nighter for a merger. "Ryan," he said, his voice thick with something I'd never heard before. "I'm having a daughter, I swear, man. I'm gonna do this right. I'm gonna be the dad we never had." Her name was Lily. I flew back for the christening. I held her, this tiny 6-pound thing with fists like marble and eyes that were the exact same piercing blue as Connor's. I remember him pulling me into a bear hug, smelling like cedar and baby powder, and saying, "She's the one, Rye. She's the reason for everything." I didn't know that was the last time I'd see him upright. Connor died at 27. It wasn't a noble death. It wasn't a battle or a heroic save. It was a drunk driver in a Chevy Silverado who crossed the yellow line on a Tuesday night while Connor was coming home from a late shift. The funeral was a blur of black umbrellas and the sound of dirt hitting a casket, a sound that stays with you forever. Emily stood there, white as a sheet, holding a 1-year-old Lily. Lily didn't understand. She was just reaching for the flowers on the grave because they were bright and pretty. After the service, Emily pulled me aside. We were in her kitchen, surrounded by casseroles from neighbors who didn't know what else to do. "Connor always said," she whispered, her voice cracking, "that if the world ever fell apart, you were the one who'd keep the pieces from blowing away. He trusted you more than anyone, Ryan." I looked at that little girl playing with a wooden spoon on the floor. "I promise Emily, whatever she needs, always. But life is a funny thing. Promises are easy to make when the grief is fresh. They're harder to keep when the decades start piling up." I went back to Chicago. My career took off like a rocket. I became a partner. I got married to a woman named Sarah who loved my ambition but hated my roots. I became the guy who sent the big gift. For Lily's 5th birthday, it was a motorized miniature car. For her 10th, a top-of-the-line laptop. For her graduation, a car. I was Uncle Ryan in the mail. I was a recurring character in a photo album, but I wasn't there. I missed the recitals. I missed the broken arms. I missed the first heartbreaks. I was busy looking out for them. Financially, but emotionally, I was a ghost. My own life started to fray. Sarah left me because she said I was present but accounted for. I buried myself deeper in work. Emily moved to North Carolina to be closer to her parents, and the distance grew from a 4-hour drive to a flight. The phone calls got shorter. The Christmas cards became happy holidays from a law firm. I thought I was keeping the promise. I was making sure they were safe. But I was forgetting the one thing Connor actually wanted. He wanted her to have a man in her life who knew who her father really was. Then, about 6 months ago, my phone buzzed during a deposition. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. "Hello, hi. Is this Ryan Vance?" The voice was soft, hesitant. "Speaking, who's this?" It's Lily, Connor's daughter." I had to sit down. The air in my office felt like it had been sucked out. "Lily, my God, it's been. How are you?" "I'm good," she said. We stumbled through some awkward small talk. She told me she was a teacher now. She lived in Raleigh. Then the silence stretched. I could hear her breathing. Ryan, she said, her voice trembling just a little. I'm getting married in October. That's amazing, Lily, truly. My mom told me about the promise you made, she went on, and I've been thinking a lot about my dad lately. I look at my photos and I see him, but I don't know him. But you do. You knew him when he was a kid. You knew him when he was happy. She took a shaky breath. I don't have anyone to walk me down the aisle. My grandpa passed last year, and I was wondering if you'd do it, not just for me, but so a part of him can be there. I didn't even check my calendar. I didn't think about the 3 cases I had scheduled for that week. Yes, I said, nothing on this earth could stop me. The week of the wedding, I drove down to North Carolina. I didn't fly. I wanted to feel the miles. I wanted to think. When I pulled up to the house, Lily was out front. She looked so much like Connor, it was like seeing a ghost in the sunlight. She had his jaw, his posture, and those eyes, those bright, electric blue eyes that looked like they were always searching for the next adventure. We spent the next 3 days together. It was the most honest I've been in 20 years. We sat on the back porch, and she didn't want to hear about my law firm or my success. She wanted to hear about the trash pandas. Tell me about the time he tried to build a boat out of old pallets, she'd say, laughing. So I told her. I told her how he almost drowned in 3 feet of water, laughing the whole time. I told her about the way he'd protect anyone smaller than him. I told her about the day she was born, how he'd cried so hard he couldn't even sign the birth certificate at first because his hands were shaking. I realized then that all the money I'd sent over the years didn't mean a damn thing compared to these stories. I was finally keeping the promise. I was bringing him back to life for her. The night before the wedding, Emily sat with me. She really looked at me and said, "You grew up, Ryan, but you still have that look in your eye. The one Connor said meant you'd never give up on a friend. I'm sorry I stayed away so long, Em. You're here now," she said. That's all that matters to her. The morning of the ceremony, I was a wreck. I've argued before the Supreme Court. I've handled billion-dollar settlements, and I've never felt my knees shake. But standing in that vestibule, I felt like a fraud. I wasn't her father. I was just the guy who survived. Lily walked in, wearing a dress that looked like it was made of clouds. She looked radiant. She looked like the future. She saw me struggling with my tie and walked over. "Hey," she said softly, "you okay? I wish he was the one standing here, Lily. You deserve that." She reached into a small bag and pulled out a velvet box. "He is here." She opened the box. Inside was a heavy stainless steel watch. It was scratched, the crystal was cracked, and the hands were frozen at 9:14. "It was his," she said. "The police found it at the site. My mom kept it all these years. She said he'd want you to wear it today, to keep the time for him." I strapped it on. It was cold against my skin, but it felt like a lead weight anchoring me to the floor. The trash pandas were back together. The music started, that heavy traditional organ swell that makes your heart climb into your throat. The doors opened, and the light from the church interior flooded out. Lily took my arm. Her hand was small, but her grip was firm. "Ready?" I whispered. "Ready," she said. Walking down that aisle was the longest journey of my life. Every step was a year. Step, 1995. Connor teaching me how to drive a stick shift. Step, 2005. Me sitting at a desk while he was being buried. Step, 2015. Sending a check because I was too busy to send a visit. Step. Now, I looked at the faces in the pews, people who loved her, people who had supported her. And I realized that I was part of a chain. Connor started it, Emily held it, and I was the link that closed the circle. When we reached the altar, the groom was waiting. He looked like a good man, nervous, eyes shining, looking at Lily like she was the North Star. The priest asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" I looked at Lily, then I looked at the broken watch on my wrist. "Her father," I said, my voice loud and clear, echoing in the rafters. And I handed her over. I felt this incredible lightness, like a debt I'd been carrying for 20 years had finally been paid in full. I didn't stay for the whole reception. I'm an old man now. I don't have the lungs for the dance floor like I used to, but I stayed for the first dance. She danced with her husband, and then she came and found me. We danced to an old song her dad used to hum, something country and slow. "Thank you, Ryan," she whispered into my shoulder, "for everything. I didn't do much, kiddo. You showed up," she said. "That's everything. I'm back in Ohio now." I didn't go back to Chicago. I sold my share of the firm. I realized I don't need a corner office. I need a porch. I bought an old house about 10 miles from where Connor and I used to ride our bikes. I'm spending my afternoons in a wood shop, learning how to make the things he used to make. I'm not very good at it yet. My tables are a bit wobbly, but the smell of the sawdust makes me feel like he's in the room, making fun of my technique. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that we spend so much of our lives trying to build success. We think looking out for people means writing checks or providing security, but that's the easy stuff, the hard stuff, the real stuff. It's being the witness. It's remembering the stories. It's keeping a promise not when it's convenient, but when the person you made it to is no longer there to hold you to it. Family isn't just about the blood in your veins. It's about the people who choose to stand in the gap when the world breaks. Connor Hale died at 27, but as I look at the blue-eyed teacher in Raleigh and the scratch on my wrist from his old watch, I know he never really left. I kept my promise, and in doing so, I finally found my way home.